Welcome to Speak Your Mind. I'm your host, Gwen. Today, we will touch on kava, a 1,000-year-old plant traditionally grown for ceremonial use. Kava is the English term. Yangona is what it's known by locally. Grog is the colonial nickname that is most widely used. Today, we're going to have a discussion. We're going to touch on kava as a commercial commodity. We're going to look at kava, how much it brings to the local economy, the new quality standards being established, and we'll also touch on the property found in kava that gives you that kick every time you have a mix. And walking us through this today is Losalini Leoningila, the National Coordinator PHAMA. Morning, Losalini. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. PHAMA, what does it stand for? Can you give us a brief background and why kava?
Inaka Gwen, the PHAMA program, the Pacific Horticultural and Agricultural Market Access Program, is an aid for trade program that is funded by the Australian and the New Zealand governments. And the program is targeted at improving and growing exports from 6 countries, Fiji being one of them. And within each of these 6 farmer countries, there is a committee which is known as the MAWG, M-A-W-G, the Market Access Working Group. The working group consists of representatives from government and from industry who are directly working on on market access and on exports. And it's this committee or this working group that identified kava and asked the program to direct resources to improving the commodity and how it is exported.
Loslini, could you explain to us the economic contribution of the Fijian kava industry?
Certainly. The PHAMA program recently commissioned a study on the kava value chain analysis. And through this work, a lot of information and data has been generated. It has reconfirmed, the fact that kava is a significant contributor to our agriculture GDP and to the national GDP. There has been a strong growth of the industry since 2012 up to 2015, where it has surpassed, taro and sugar contributions. In 2015, kava earned 113.5 million, compared to a sugar of 50.7 million. And, since then it has been having an upward trend.
Speaking of upward trend, Losalini, the volume of kava exports, would you be able to touch on that? And have we also expanded into new markets?
From 2007 to 2012, exports grew steadily, reaching 300 tons per annum. But since then, because of the climatic conditions, we had a period of drought, and then we had, the cyclone. Exports were erratic. And in 2016, it went up again to 269 tons. This information is documented and available in this very glossy publication of the study, Gwen. But, despite the fluctuating export volumes, the value of kava exports has grown strongly from around 4 million in 2000 to $14 million. This is Fiji dollars, 14 million Fiji dollars in 2016. In 2016, Fiji exported 269 tons of kava valued at $14.3 million. And the three major markets accounted for 84% of the volume and 80% of the value. And these three markets are the United States of America, New Zealand, and Kiribati. Almost all of the remainder went to the other Pacific Island countries. And the average export price was $55 per kilo, with exports to the U.S. reaching an average of $97 per kilo.
Mm-hmm. Well, with you quoting all those figures, it is a thriving agricultural commodity.
It is. You know, the export markets still concentrated on the beverage market. You know, this beverage being, you know, how we traditionally use kava in Fiji. We mix it with water and we drink. So, you know, all these export figures are to do with that beverage, with the beverage market.
Well, that from export, Loselini, let's just talk about employment, as in the number of growers and farm workers or businesses sustained by the kava sector.
Of course, you know, in 2009, the Ministry of Agriculture conducted an agricultural census. And this census identified over 20,000 farms with some kava growing. Now, this includes farms with very small amounts of kava grown, mainly for household consumption. Since 2009, the Ministry of Agriculture has estimated that there are 10,400 growers that are growing kava commercially. Now, it's also possible that the number of growers could have declined between 2009 and 2016. But, you know, it's safe to say that, you know, there's a good number of people that are involved in cultivating, in harvesting, in processing, like cleaning and sorting and, you know, grading, drying, and packing and transporting, and of course retailing.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting, Loselini, that you brought that up, because when you look at it, those who depend on it for their livelihood live in the rural areas. And there was an interesting fact I read as well, you know, that was actually given by PHAMA, that more than 70% of our rural communities rely on kava for employment and as a consistent source of income. When we come back, we'll continue speaking to Loselini Leoningila, the National Coordinator of PHAMA. This is Speak Your Mind, and our guest this morning is Loselini Leoningila, the National Coordinator of PHAMA. And also just reminding you, FBC TV viewers, that we have infographics. Okay, we're pulling that up on the show today. You know, this simplifies the information that Loselini is sharing with us this morning. It makes the information more easy to understand. And we're also uploading that on our Speak Your Mind Facebook page, so do take the time to have a look. Loselini, let's talk about domestic sales. You know, it's being valued at 92%. This is quite substantial. I mean, if you look at exports, they're just 8%. Would you care to discuss that with us?
You know, in 2016, that 92% equates to $315 million in domestic gross revenue, while gross revenue for exports, 5%, is equal to $14 million. In 2015, the figures obtained from the Bureau of Statistics and the Ministry of Agriculture showed that the total agriculture GDP was 514 million, and the percentage of kava contribution to that total agriculture GDP is 22%, which is equivalent to $113.5 million.
Yeah. Now, Loslini, in 2005, kava was the ninth export commodity of Fiji.
Yes.
Where does it rank to date?
You know, kava has ranked number 5 in the 2016 export commodities by volume. It's behind eggplant, cassava, turmeric, and taro. The volume of taro was highest at 5.8 million kilograms. Kava export volume was 258,705 kilograms. However, by value of exports, kava was second to taro at $14.25 million, while taro was $23.9 million.
On Speak Your Mind, we're talking to the National Coordinator of PHAMA, Loselini Leonigila. And also, if you have any questions for her listeners on Gold FM, you can call up 322-0906 or 322-0907. Loselini, this is very interesting. Let's discuss the properties of kava. You know, one of its primary marketable value is kava lactones. It's found in the root, and it gives you that kick or numbs your mouth. For us lightweights, it paralyzes us. But would you care to explain this further to us, Loselini?
Yes, as you rightly described, Gwen, you know, kava lactone is the active ingredient in kava, and it is what gives kava its distinctive strength to either relax you and put you in that happy space. Amongst consumers, the physiological effects of these kava lactones are viewed as an important characteristic of quality. So, the more kava lactones a particular kava variety has, the better it is. And through this work that we carried out with the Institute of Applied Science at USB, they were able to test and confirm the profile, if you like, of the kava lactones of each variety. And, there are 6 types of kava lactones. And because they have such long chemical names, they've been given a numbering system. So it's kava lactone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And through a research, it has been confirmed that if a particular variety of kava has a high concentration of kava lactone type 2, 4, and 6, then the scientists call it desirable, which means that it is a good variety, and therefore it's called a noble variety. And so the presence and the concentration of these 6 kava lactones in a variety determine its quality. So it is an important feature of any kava variety, and indeed for any grower or any kava farmer to know what kind of variety should he plant for which particular market. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, Loselini, let's look at the different regions that grog are grown in. I mean, is there I don't know, but I was reading that Kandavu ranks quite highly, and they've even been called the land of the muddy water. But yeah, let's discuss the different regions that actually grow grog.
The work that we carried out, 2 years of work before we could actually produce the Fiji Kava Quality Manual. We visited the major producing kava areas in Fiji, and as I referred to earlier, it is the concentration of kava lactones that determines the quality of the kava. And through our work, we were able to confirm that the kava produced in parts of Kandavu and in parts of Dhaka were equal in terms of quality and the concentration of the kava lactones. That is not to say that there were some good concentrations as well recorded in varieties that were grown in, say, in Mbua, in Madhuata, in Naitasiri, in Taviuni, in Ovalau. There were in Namosi. There are varieties that are grown in each of these regions. They do have kava lactones that are, that are wanted by the market. The market. But in terms of concentration of kava lactones, the highest that were recorded were from plants that came from Kandavu and in Dhaka.
Just speaking about kava, I was surprised to read that Fiji has 13 varieties. Could you just expand on this for us?
Sure. Fiji is blessed to have these 13 varieties that are regarded as noble. It all has, they all have high concentrations of kava lactones, 2, 4, and 6. And it makes, it makes work easier in the technical sense that all the varieties in Fiji are noble, they're desirable, they're good, and we should plant more. These varieties, the names are also in the quality manual, but, just out of the top of my head, 13 varieties are Yalu, there's Yonolulu, there's Ndamu, and then there's variations amongst. There is Ngona Vula Kasaleka, there's Vula Kasambalavu, there's Ndokombana Vula, there's Ndokombana Loa, there's Matakaro Vula, there's Matakaro Loa, there's Ngila Leka, and there's Ngila Balavu. We are, this is the first time that there is a Fiji-specific publication on the varieties that's been documented, and it is good because buyers overseas can have a document to refer to. The next step in terms of varieties and naming is that across the Pacific, kava is a Pacific product. The Samoa, Tonga, Vanuatu, I believe there's also kava grown in Solomons and PNG. We need to find names for the varieties because every country has its own name for its variety. Even within Fiji, we have varieties. It's the same variety. It is Vula Kasambalavu, for example, grown in Dhaka, but it is called by a different name in Namosi or called by a different name in Ovalau. Farmers tend to coin their own names for varieties, depending on, if someone had brought a planting material from Ngau, they start to call that variety Ngau. So there is some work to be done on standardizing names as well, so that when we talk about Yangona Kasavula, whether it's Leka or Mbalavu, here in Fiji, we know exactly what it is in Vanuatu or in Tonga.
Okay. Loslin, I just wanted to ask, you're looking at 13 different varieties of kava. Has a manual ever been developed, describing these different varieties, what they taste like, or the different flavors, or the dope effect they produce?
That's in this Fiji Kava Quality Manual. We've actually listed in the appendix varietal names and their kava lactone profile. If you look at the profile, and if the numbers 2, 4, 6 in any order if they figure and they are at the front, they usually put the highest concentration at the front. Those are bound to be the ones that will give you the biggest or the strongest kick.
Thank you so much. This is Speak Your Mind, and our in-studio guest is Losalini Leoningila, the National Coordinator of PHAMA. Stay with us. When we'll come back, we are going to be looking at the priority actions. Sorry, we're going to be looking at farmers' priority actions. On Speak Your Mind, our in-studio guest today is Losalini Leoningila, the National Coordinator of PHAMA, and FBC TV viewers, also listeners, just reminding you that on the Speak Your Mind Facebook page, we've uploaded infographics. Thank you so much to PHAMA. They've simplified information for you, information that Losalini is sharing with us this morning. Now, when you look at that infographic, if you see the bottom left-hand corner, it actually states there that 3,300 to 3,700 tons of grog are consumed locally. I'm sure that is more than the recommended amount, Losalini. I'm not an expert here, but there's no doubt that Fijians love their grog. Okay, Losalini, as a farmer, as a key stakeholder in building the Fijian kava industry and ensuring its sustainability, let's look at farmers' priority actions.
Okay, Vinaka Gwen, just before we go into the priorities, just pointing out, like the work that we have done, that survey of production areas was carried out. This kava quality manual was developed, and there's another document, the national standard for kava, that was also developed. And then, we've also, as a program, provided grants to innovative companies, for tissue culture and for companies that are like for food safety related issues. We've also provided some targeted support for community level of nursery productions. We're also providing some support for the Fiji Kava Task Force. This is a group of government and kava industry stakeholders that meet quarterly to map out what work to be done next. And then we also, this is going into what we see as priorities, for the coming years. One is, to develop the regulations that will support the kava bill. The kava bill is already in the parliamentary process. I believe that it is in the process of a second reading, and hopefully, regulations can be developed to sit under the kava bill. The other, I suppose, I could group them into three main groups of where the priority actions lie. One, the first area is of work to be done is to make sure or to guarantee that there is an increased and stable and sustainable level of kava production. Right now, the cost of kava is so high because the supply is low. If we had more kava, it the prices wouldn't be so high. The second area of work is to develop a better or a stronger regulatory framework so that it can address issues or that it can safeguard like our exports. You may know of how the markets in the EU were closed because inferior products were being exported. And, that's one area of work that we as a cover producing country need to do to ensure that we have the framework to be able to protect exports and at the same time stimulate production of quality product that'll leave Fiji and, no issues with food safety or human health. The third area or priority area that we need to be going into is that within Fiji we need to differentiate the two pathways, kava that is going to be exported and kava that's going to be consumed locally. We at the program realize that yes, product that we export should be safe for the consumer. But at the same time, we also recognize we local consumers should also be sure that the product we are buying is safe to consume, and then it's not going to make us sick. Yeah.
Loselini, I actually had left that question when you're talking about, that kava should be safe for human consumption, right? I had left the question for later, but I think I probably would ask you now because it's quite a concern that, people are sending adulterated packets, mixing flour with powder. Are there controls in place? How can we better regulate this?
That's where the regulations come in. Right now, the regulation that would impact on things like adulteration is the Food Safety Act. And that's, already in place and is enforced by the Ministry of Health. But we know and we recognize that, because kava, it's not, it's a product that, it's another food product and that it needs to be regulated. How it is sold, how it is packed, how it is dried, that whole process. I apologize, I keep referring to this kava quality manual because the issues with quality is addressed, or I addressed in the kava quality manual.
I will touch on that when we come back from our break. We're speaking to Loselini Leoningila. This is Speak Your Mind, the National Coordinator of PHAMA. This is Speak Your Mind. Welcome to the show, and we're speaking to the National Coordinator PHAMA Program, Loselini Leoningila. Loselini, could you discuss with us key clauses in the Kava Bill 2016? Some of the clauses that you'd like to highlight that, could advance the restructure of our kava industry and why this is necessary.
Avinaka Gwen, the Kava Bill identifies that there is a need for a kava sector strategy. Right now, there isn't any national strategy for the kava industry. And it should also enable the implementation of the strategy. The Kava Bill is also proposing that, a Kava Council be established. And, basically it is driving at getting the kava industry to be organized so that, the industry can self-regulate. One of the things that is being proposed is to have an export levy so that this levy can finance the developments within the industry. But I think one thing that's clear out of the work that we have been carrying out is that the levy needs to go to an industry-controlled body, not to Treasury or not to a body that's controlled by government.
Thanks, Loselini. I just needed to ask, as an income earner, if you're looking at somebody who owns a small farm, What is the net return for farmers producing, for example, 268 kg of kava?
268. Is that your magic number, Gwen? Okay, for simplicity, let's just say like 200 kilos. Say for a farmer who's producing like 200 kilograms per week. Now, based on the study that was done by our team of economists on the value chain analysis, now the revenue for someone who's producing 200 kilograms of kava per week, the revenue would be $14,400. So $14,400. The costs, the total of the variable costs would be $11,700 per week. That means the total gross margin for someone, producing 200 kilograms would be $2,700 per week. That's, assuming that the price or the going price is $70 per kilo. So that's quite a good gross margin, eh? Yeah.
It is indeed. And just speaking of that, I also wanted to ask, the kava sector is more male-dominated. How are we closing the gender gap? How do we get more women participation?
I'm glad you asked that question. If I can just go back to the 2016 kava profile, the figures that were provided by the Ministry of Agriculture, there's 10,471 farmers registered. Of this figure, 10,254 are males and 218 are female farmers. That's about 2.1% of the total registered kava farmers. One of the work that we are always very happy to talk about is that the work that we did in targeting groups, farmer groups, and one youth group. We working with the Ministry of Agriculture. These farmer groups were brought to visit identified nurseries in the Singatoka Valley and in Nandi. Then these groups went back, and the expectation was they would apply what they had seen during this field visit. And one of the stories that we love to talk about is in the appendix of this book, the value chain work. One of the female farmers that came as part of the youth group, all the way from Lovoni village on the island of Ovalau, this Vani Naudukindi is now running a kava nursery. So she sells on Facebook and gets her orders on Facebook, puts the orders on their village truck that comes daily on the Patterson ferry, and buyers pick up their product from the jetty at Natovi. We have sort of agreed in the program that if women were to be actively involved, it would have to be in that area of nursery establishment and nursery and selling of kava seedlings. It would work. It has worked in this case for Vani, because the nursery is a few steps away from her home. She is able to do the household chores and also devote time and energy to the nursery establishment. There's also a very good story on this lady, Uma Sapra, in Taviuni. Uma and her son Abhishek plant, grade, and send Angona direct from Taviuni to the US of A. Great stories.
Great stories indeed. Thank you so much. We're speaking to Loselini Leoningila, National Coordinator PHAMA. When we join you after the break, we'll talk about kava being produced for the pharmaceutical industry. This is Speak Your Mind, and our in-studio guest today is Loselini Leoningila, the National Coordinator PHAMA Program. Loselini, let's talk about, the pharmaceutical industry. How much kava is being produced, and have we also expanded into new markets?
Thank you, Gwen. From the work that we've done, uh, there's not much. So the exports for pharmaceuticals quite low for Fiji. The exporters are finding it too expensive right now with the prices of kava. And the pharmaceutical market is a more sophisticated market. And I think right now exporters of kava, that is, um, uh, um, um, I suppose, are in a rough patch right now with the prices so high. I think many of them are focused on meeting the requirements of the beverage market rather than the pharmaceuticals.
And speaking of the beverage, Loselini, following Tropical Cyclone Winston, there was severe shortage that caused a price hike. When can we expect the price to stabilize, if you can answer that?
I'm not an economist, so I pick the brains of the economists a lot in the program. What they think is that, since the practice of selling standing plants and selling green cover encourages a shortage of planting material, it's going to continue to cause a shortage of cover. And because of this shortage, the prices of cover will continue to be high. It is believed that prices might slowly come down when the seed material multiplication program, and this is one of the work that the Ministry of Agriculture is doing. Um, if that the multiplication of planting material, so that there is more planting material available, so that we can plant more cover. Once we have more cover, prices will come down. And we also have to remember that cover, the recommended maturity recommended maturity for harvest is 3 years. So that's partly too why the farmer program assisted the one of actually the first commercial tissue culture lab in Fiji. It's a small company called Biotech Fiji Limited, and they are in the business of rapid multiplication of planting material. So, there is some work being done in that space, so that this problem of the lack of planting material can be solved. Once that is solved, we should have more cover that is being produced. And once there's more cover being cultivated and harvested, the prices should come down.
Rosalini, just a final question. Those new to the kava trade, like youth or women, where they can get the manual that you've been sharing with us this morning on the show, or technical support from PHAMA if they need it?
Thank you, Gwen. We at the program we always refer farmers first to the Ministry of Agriculture. The Ministry of Agriculture has a comprehensive and effective network of extension officers who provide that type of information to new growers. Whether you need a farm management plan, or for basic things like testing the soil to ensure that you have fertile soil for production of kava. Having said that, there's a lot of information that is with the Ministry of Agriculture, but if you're interested, we also have a website at the PHAMA program, www.phama.com.au, where these reports are available and can be accessed by anyone. Yes.
Well, and we're wrapping Speak Your Mind for another week. And of course, we'd like to thank our in-studio guest, Losteline Leoningila. Thank you so much for your time, the National Coordinator of PHAMA.